At the end of the first half, Miami has the ball. They get it to midfield, and they're going to have to throw a Hail Mary. So what does Tua Tagovailoa do? They hike him the ball. He looks and looks and looks. He can't find anybody open, and he gets sacked. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10's for Friday. Welcome to Just the Stats. This is Ernie Jennings, your host. And today we'll look back at that Thursday night game. Wasn't much of a game, but we'll talk about that a little bit. Also, we'll cover some team stats, overall team stats. And then we'll call it a wraps for Friday. And we'll be looking forward to talking about all the games that happen on Sunday. A lot of good games. There's a couple really important games. I don't know if you haven't seen my top 10 teams. I did not have the Buffalo Bills ranked in the top 10. I know that's crazy, but I didn't. They haven't beaten a winning team so far this season. So I do believe if they can win this game coming up, then they have a chance to jump in the top 10, of course. Because I do believe the Buffalo Bills are playing Kansas City Chiefs in Buffalo. So if they win that game, obviously they deserve to be in the top 10. They probably do already, but like I said in that podcast about the top 10 teams, I put them in there initially. And then as I kept adding teams or rearranging the teams, I kept bumping them out. And then when I looked at who they've beaten this season, I thought, well, look, hey, they haven't beaten anybody with a winning record. And the two teams, well, they lost to the Atlanta Falcons, who are not a winning team. And they lost to New England Patriots in their division. So I thought, how can I put them up there at this point in time? Though when we look at some of these team stats, they're up there in all the team stats. And so is that because they're a good team, or is that because they keep playing poor teams? So we'll have to see. All right. So with that, let's check out some of this information that I've compiled since yesterday. And first of all, we'll look at the Thursday night game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Miami Dolphins. The Ravens won it 28-6. Really, it could have been a much closer game. The Miami Dolphins, they sure know how to shoot themselves in the foot. But looking at the Ravens, Lamar Jackson looked really good, precise with his passes. So it's good for the Ravens to have him back, but he made some really nice passes in this game. Derrick Henry had 119 yards. Very good there. You know, the one thing about Derrick Henry that's so fascinating is he is not that good of a goal line, you need 1 yard kind of a guy. You would think that he would easily be that, but he's not. It's more, I don't know. He's just not that kind of a guy. He doesn't seem to be able to have that speed built up to hit the hole or even force his way through. But I mean, you give him a chance to get going a little bit and he's scary. But just needing a yard, he just can't do it. And he didn't do it yesterday really either. But then he would pull off, 10-yard runs and stuff around the end. But good for them. When they're winning, and you got Jackson and Henry playing, you got a winning combination there. It's just when Henry can run and have the opportunities, he rushed 19 times, I believe it was. It just is so good for the offense. And then that just opens up the field with, Andrews and Zay Flowers and so forth. But this game here was lost by the Dolphins just by mistakes. just unbelievable. Because when you look at the numbers, the Ravens, in the Dolphins, Ravens had 18 first downs, the Dolphins had 17. Total yards, Baltimore 338, Miami 332. It's very close. Time of possession, the Baltimore had a little bit more, just under 32 minutes to just over 28, but still that's fairly close. The key to me in this game was turnovers and missed field goal, because the Miami Dolphins were moving it down the field and then they would fumble it. Twice they fumbled it, then they had an interception. They just could not get it together, and they had a field goal they missed as well. So that's a lot of points that were left there that would have made this game a much closer game. And then one other thing that just irks me is at the end of the first half, Miami has the ball. They get it to midfield, and they're going to have to throw a Hail Mary. So what does Tua Tagovailoa do? They hike him the ball. He looks and looks and looks. He can't find anybody open, and he gets sacked. Just throw the ball. It doesn't matter. You just throw it as far as you can. You hope that your guy catches it. Maybe you get a pass interference. But to not throw it, what does it matter if somebody intercepts it at the goal line? They're not going to run it back 100 yards. That's so unlikely. It's just as likely that you're going to, when you're getting sacked, you fumble it. So just, why take a sack? Just throw the ball and see what happens. I couldn't believe it. I don't know what he was looking for. You're not going to find an open guy wide open in the end zone when, 9 defensive players, 8-9 defensive players are down in the end zone waiting for you. So it was just, that was a wasted opportunity. It's just an incomplete pass or intercepted, but you never know. If you don't throw it, you never know. So anyway, that game, every time it looked like Miami might have a chance, they blew it. And it really honestly wasn't the Ravens stopping them. It was just the Dolphins stopping them. Like I said, fumbling the ball, in the red zone twice, and then having interception as well, and then missing a field goal. All those are all points, possible points they could have had right there that could have made this a much more interesting game. Now, Baltimore could have scored maybe more than 28 as well if they really wanted to. So you never know. But like I said, the Dolphins, and you could see it on the coach's face. If you watch the game, he's having a hard time with this team. All right. So now let's look at some of the numbers come out of that game. And this is the Ravens here. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll have charts up when I do post this on YouTube. But Mark Andrews is already moving up the list. He's number 3 all time in receptions for the Ravens. And he only needs 11 more receptions to tie Derek Mason for first, and 12, obviously, to become the all-time leader there. He's already the all-time leader in touchdown receptions. But Zay Flowers had been sitting at number 11. He had 192 receptions, and Steve Smith Sr. and Marquise Brown both had 195. So in this game, Zay Flowers had 5 receptions. He's now got 197, which puts him into 9th all-time by himself. So that's finally got another player here from the Ravens in the top 10. And honestly, 471 receptions is the all-time leading number for the Baltimore Ravens as far as receptions go. That's amazing. I'd have to go through. I don't even think the Chicago Bears have a number that low as far as the number 1 player. A lot of teams have a player with anywhere from 800 to 1,100, somewhere in that range as their number 1 wide receiver or receiver, period. Sometimes it's a tight end, say like Kansas City with Kelsey. So Mark Andrews definitely has a chance to be another tight end to go to number 1. Todd Heap was a tight end. He's number 2. So that'll be the next person for Mark Andrews to pass. But Zay Flowers now moves into the top 10. He's number 9. Travis Taylor with 204 receptions is in 8th. That's the next spot for Zay Flowers. And honestly, Zay Flowers needs only 37 receptions to move all the way to 5th, believe it or not. And then there's a big jump after that. So he could move way up the list this season. All right, so that's Zay Flowers and receptions. Now in touchdowns, like I said, Mark Andrews already number 1 in this category. He had 2 last night. So Jackson was very efficient with his passing, like 18 for 23 for a little over 200 yards. Really efficient, but he threw 4 touchdown passes, and 2 of them were to Mark Andrews. So Mark Andrews now has 55 receiving touchdowns, which is 14 more than second place. Pretty good there. Now, on the bottom end of this top 10, Rashad Bateman and Isaiah Likely have been sitting on 14 for a couple of weeks. And finally, Rashad Bateman had a touchdown reception. So he's now moved into the tie for top 10. He's tied for 10th with 15 touchdown receptions. He's tied with Travis Taylor. They both have 15. So Isaiah Likely's the guy still sitting on right on the outside trying to get into the top 10. He's 1 touchdown away. Now, next up for Rashad Bateman is Jermaine Lewis with 16. So he's got a chance to move up this list a little bit himself. I mean, he's got 15. He's not getting that many. Michael Jackson and Derrick Henry are tied for 7th and Quadre Ismail tied for 6th, actually, with 18. So he could get as far as that, I think, possibly. But when you watch the Ravens, it's the tight ends that seem to catch a lot of these touchdown passes. Jackson's able to wait long enough for a tight end to get open in the end zone often, and then that's where the touchdowns come. And in this game, most of these receptions that I can think of, if not all of them, the receiver is wide open. So it was not too good of a defense for the Miami Dolphins last night as far as coverage goes. All right, now let's look at some of the top 10 teams issues, or not issues, but categories. So we'll start with points per game. And this will show you a little bit why I put Indianapolis Colts as the number 1 team in the NFL, at least right now. Obviously, things can change. You never know. But right now, the Indianapolis Colts lead the NFL in points per game with 33.8. In fact, they increased it by 0.7 from week 7. They've upped their total points per game. Dallas Cowboys are second with 30.8, and the Detroit Lions have 30.7. They were on a bye week. Dallas Cowboys dropped almost a full point last week. They scored 22 in their game. So you've got the Indianapolis Colts 3 points more per game, field goal basically, than the second best team. There's only 3 teams scoring 30-plus points a game right now. Now, when you're looking at this, Buffalo Bills did move up this list quite a bit. It came in from week 7. They had 27.8. After week 8, they had 29.6. So almost 2 points a game they jumped up there. Pretty good there. And most of the teams in this list did jump up. The 2 that didn't dropped right out. And now the Eagles and the Denver Broncos make up the bottom end of the top 10 here. Denver Broncos have 25.9 points a game and the Eagles 26 points a game. So they made it into the top 10. But you can see right there that there's a 7-point touchdown difference between the teams at the bottom of this list and then the Indianapolis Colts at the top. So they have been looking good. All right, so that's a look at the points. Now, look at the yards, and this is kind of interesting because there's not a huge difference in a way. Indianapolis Colts also lead most yards per game. they're averaging 385.3 yards a game. That's a lot, honestly. 250.9 passing, 134.4 rushing. So they lead total yards. Dallas Cowboys are just a yard, 1.2 yards behind, 384.1. They're averaging 263.8 yards passing and 120.4 yards rushing. So the Dallas Cowboys lead the NFL in passing yards per game with 263.8. I find this interesting because then it kind of shows you why. So like last week in week 8, only two quarterbacks had 300 or more yards passing. It's not an easy thing to do, honestly, when your leading team is averaging 264 yards a game. That's the Dallas Cowboys. So somebody's got to up their number in a single game, by at least, 36 yards, if that's the Dallas Cowboys, to even get to 300. And some of these other teams need even more, So somebody like the Los Angeles Rams are averaging 256.7, so 257 yards. And Stafford has thrown for over 300 yards, quite a bit more. But just to even he's got to go over his average by 43 yards just to get to 300. So that shows you how hard it is for some of these teams, to have a 300-yard game. All right, so Buffalo Bills are third with 282.9, 218.4 passing, and 164.4 rushing. That is the highest number as far as rushing goes, 164.4. And just like in the passing, where Dallas Cowboys 263.8 yards passing, the next best team is the Rams with 256.7. So that's, 7 yards per game fewer. It's a kind of a big gap right there. Now, it's even bigger when you're looking at rushing. Like I said, the Bills are averaging 164.4. The next best team is the Denver Broncos with 137.8. That's a huge difference. It's talking about the teams in the top 10. So quite a bit of a difference there. Buffalo Bills do have between Cook and Allen, they do rush for quite a bit of yards. The other interesting thing on this chart is you have a couple of little gaps. You have 3 teams that are averaging over 380 yards, and then you have 2 more that are averaging over 378, and then there's a big drop. So Kansas City Chiefs come in at 5th with 378.3 yards. And 6th is the Rams with 360.1. That's 18 yards a game difference. Pretty big, honestly. That's almost 2 first downs right there, if you want to look at it like that. And then at the bottom of the list, New England Patriots, 353.1 yards total. So when you look at that compared to the Colts at number 1, that's 32 yards a game. That's 3 first downs, which could be very meaningful when you're moving down the field. If you're getting 30 more yards a game than the other team, that's not bad. But it's also kind of interesting that how close these numbers are, honestly. When you look at it, Colts 385, Cowboys 384, that's a yard in a game, an entire game. That's not that much. But when you look at it and you compare it to, how it translates into points, it's almost immediate, the similar. I mean, you got the Colts and the Cowboys leading in yards per game and leading in points per game. So it does translate quite a bit. Now, the Detroit Lions are 3rd in scoring per game, but 8th in yards per game. So big difference there. One of the few. It's a little bit interesting to see how these translate. Somebody like the Philadelphia Eagles, who just broke into the top 10 as far as points go, they're not even in the top 10 as total yards per game. So that's something to watch. We'll see if Indianapolis Colts can continue to stay on top as far as this goes. I don't know. Their schedule will get more difficult. We'll see if these numbers continue to maintain themselves. But when they're scoring 33 points a game, and we'll look at this coming up here, that's a lot of points a game. And you can talk about who they're playing, and we'll look at that in just a second and see how it translates. Now, points allowed per game. Houston Texans, 14.7 points a game. This is after week 8. They had a bye week, so their number stayed the same. The Kansas City Chiefs were third. They moved to second. They had, after week 7, they were at 17.7. After week 8, they dropped down to 16.4. And that's because they beat the hapless Raiders, who did not even score a point. That's definitely going to help your points allowed per game. The Rams, who did not play as well, they're at 16.7. And then there's a little bit of a drop to the New England Patriots, 18.3. They had been at 19. They dropped down to 18.3. So that's impressive. You've got now 7 teams that allow less than 20 points a game. And when you cross-reference this in a way, and we'll get this when we get to it, but the Colts allowing 19.3 and scoring 33.1. That's a huge difference. The only new team on this list is the Buffalo Bills. Jumped into the top 10. They're allowing 20.9 points a game. So they jumped into number 9 spot. All right, let's look at this as far as scoring margin. And you can't criticize the Colts because they're playing weak teams and they're winning. That they should win those games, obviously. But when you're looking at the scoring, Indianapolis Colts are number 1 in scoring margin. They're averaging 14.5 points more than they're allowing. That's 2 touchdowns more. So they are beating the teams that they should beat, and they're beating them easily. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs jumped from 8.9 points scoring margin to 10.4, and that's because they crushed the Raiders, like I said, who did not even score. So that easily helped them jump their margin up. They're the only 2 teams averaging, having a scoring margin over 10 yards or 10 points, I guess it should say. So the Colts are averaging 2 touchdowns better. The Kansas City Chiefs are averaging a touchdown and a field goal better than their opponents. Detroit Lions, 9.1. They're the next team. Buffalo Bills, 8.7. The Patriots, 8.4. This is kind of interesting to me because, like I said, I didn't put the Bills in the top 10, but they're doing fairly well. And again, but they're playing bad teams. And the two losses they have are against the Falcons and the Patriots. The Patriots have a winning record. So, they should have a decent scoring margin, if considering who you're playing. They have not beat, like I said, they have not beat a winning team yet, and they've lost to a team with a 3-4 record. That's the Falcons. And then they, of course, lost to the New England Patriots in Buffalo, by the way. So we'll see how they do against Kansas City. That's a huge game, that game right there, because of the standings right now. When you look at it, the Buffalo Bills are definitely putting the pressure on the New England Patriots for first place. And they would be tied. Right now, the Patriots have played one more game, so they have a half-game lead on the Bills, plus the tiebreaker is in the favor of the Patriots. But the Bills are putting pressure on them. So if they lose this game, that gives the Patriots a little bit of a break there. And it's the same for the Denver Broncos and the Los Angeles Chargers. Kansas City Chiefs started off so bad, and yet now they're tied with the Chargers at 5-3, and they're only a game behind the Denver Broncos, who are at 6-2. And obviously, there's still more divisional games left to play. So, the Denver Broncos and the Chargers are definitely rooting for the Buffalo Bills to win to give themselves a little cushion over the Kansas City Chiefs, who are going to be there in the end at some point. And so any help they can get from the Bills, they'd appreciate. And the same goes for the Patriots. They would love to see the Bills lose this game and give themselves a little bit of a gap, not only the tiebreaker, but then a whole game edge over the Bills as well. So it's a big game for the Bills and the Chiefs. It's going to hurt one of them and help their divisional rivals, and then vice versa. So we'll see how that goes. All right. That's a look at this. Now, Houston Texans, they lead the NFL in fewest points allowed, and they have a scoring margin of 7.1 that they're winning their games by. They're another team that needs to get on a big winning streak, and they're averaging a touchdown better than their opponents, so they could become a much more difficult team to play. But unlike the Bills and the Chiefs, who are trying to catch their first place opponents, the Houston Texans have to get past the Jaguars and the Colts have a 4-game lead, I guess a 3.5-game lead over the Houston Texans. That's a huge lead for Houston Texans to overcome. It's not going to be easy for them. So they definitely need to continue to win. But with a 7-point scoring margin, it's a good team. Their defense is good, and if they get their offense going, they could be a really difficult team to play. Now, all these teams on this list are good teams. The top 10 teams. The Packers are at the number 10. They have a scoring margin of plus 6.1. Every one of these teams, except for Houston, is right up there near the top of their division. So we'll have to see how it goes as the season goes on. All right, let's look at penalties. Well, the fewest penalties allowed are by the Rams. They've only allowed 38. Now, that's in 7 games, though. Cincinnati Bengals, 40, and the Falcons, 41. Those teams have had 7 games. The Steelers, 42. So the bottom of this list, like I said, the Rams with 38, the Bengals with 40. Now, when you're looking at the top of this list, the Denver Broncos have the most penalties, 68. Now, they've played 8 games. Dallas Cowboys, 8 games. They have 67. The Jaguars are third with 65, but they've only played 7 games. So it's very likely when they play 8 games, they will be the number 1 team as far as most penalties that they're getting on themselves. It's just been a kind of a disaster the last couple of weeks for them. There's only 2 teams, the Jacksonville Jaguars with 65 penalties and the Chicago Bears with 64 in the top 10 who've played only 7 games versus the rest of the top 10 who have played 8 games. So they're able to make it in the top 10 with 1 fewer game. That's not a good recipe to continue to win with. And then one last category that we're looking at as far as teams go, which kind of helps you see whether a team can win or not, and that's turnover differential. Chicago Bears have a plus 10 in this category. They've had 16 takeaways to 6 giveaways. Big difference. Now, the Jaguars had jumped out in the first 5 games and had the lead here, but since then they haven't done anything as far as taking away the ball. But they're still at plus 8, and they have 14 takeaways against 6 giveaways. Colts, again, here's another reason why they're up there. Plus 8 in differential, 12 takeaways, only 4 giveaways. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs had looked pretty good, but then they had a couple of interceptions. They're at +5. Tampa Bay's +7. The Lions +6. Like I said, every team, again, except for the Houston Texans, they're quite an anomaly because their record is a losing record, but they're up there in, scoring margin, best defense, points allowed. They have a positive turnover differential, and yet they have a losing record at this point in time. All right. Well, that's a look at some of the best teams. We'll see if the Chicago Bears can stay at the top of this list in turnover differential in their game. And same with the Jaguars. They're getting their best defensive player back, I think, which should help them. And hopefully the Oakland Raiders, I say Oakland, boy, that ages me. The Las Vegas Raiders put the same type of numbers up they put against the Kansas City Chiefs when they play the Raiders this Sunday. All right, well, that's a wrap looking at some of the teams and the Thursday night game. Appreciate you listening. You can find this podcast on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. Like I said, there'll be charts up here of all these things we talked about today. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. You can also, if you're just going to listen to the audio version, you can find it on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple, whatever outlet you use. And appreciate you listening again. As I said, hope you enjoy your football Sunday and Monday and your team wins, whoever that may be. All right, so until next time, that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL Top 10s for Friday.